This is WOMMLP operating out of Burlington, Vermont, 105.9 The Radiator. Good evening, it's the Rocket Shop. I am back once again, your host Tom Proctor, and with me tonight is Joe Bled. Hello.
Hello.
Um, Good evening. Glad you came in tonight. I'm excited to see what you're about to produce. For those that are not watching on our live stream, you got a metal washboard on your chest, so
Right.
this is a pretty unusual instrument in this space. So yeah, I'm looking forward to what you can produce with it.
Yeah. It's got a range of things for such a monotonous idea of just metal on metal, but there's a lot that can be done.
Yeah, I'm very sure. Obviously, the washboard's a very old school instrument. I hope
Yeah.
it's got a comeback coming soon. Maybe you're the forefront of it.
I don't know. I don't know about that. It's when I bought this. I mean, I intended to make experimental music with it when I bought it, but I became enamored with it years ago just because it really only exists in Zydeco basically and some other kinds of like southern folk music. I thought it was a great instrument in the fact that it was just anybody could play it. Like you don't have to. I think it was just somebody's cousin that was in the band that played the washboard. You know, it doesn't. It takes very little skill to actually play along with 4/4 music, which is great because it's inclusive.
Yeah.
And then when I got this right before the pandemic really shut everything down, and I investigated if there was anybody else that was using it in anything outside of Zydeco, and it's very few and far between. There are a few people who are using it in jazz music, and there's a few people that have used it like in rock and roll and stuff. But I think the idea behind what I've been doing is it's nothing new, but it's kind of unique for this instrument.
Right. And also, as you said, it's not just accessible in terms of who can play it. It's also a very kind of working class instrument. It's something. It's the original tool is to wash your clothes with, and it's
Right.
not for those who tend to have a lot of money, or at least not in the past. It was for
Right,
those that had a lot of
absolutely.
money.
I mean, initially, and still to a lot of people, it's just an actual working washboard. These are sometimes differentiated because these are sometimes called frottoirs or rub boards rather than washboards because this one was never intended to wash anything, whereas the other ones were literally built to wash clothes.
Yeah.
And they still are manufactured for that. It's not so common in the U.S., but I think in other parts of the world they're still very common.
Right, where you don't have maybe easy accessible access
Right,
to
to
electricity or
electricity.
water. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. Well, we like kicking off with a song.
Cool.
I keep using the word song because it's obviously generally what I ask of the artist coming in. What's a better way to refer to it?
I don't really know. I don't think of it like that. In my mind, song has more of like a popular music connotation. You don't say like, "Oh, dude, have you heard that Mozart song?" Not that I'm comparing myself to Mozart, but it's just like a piece of work or improvisation or a song to me seems like it's kind of like a constrictive set of rules.
In which case, I'll refer to them as a piece.
How about a
this
piece?
evening.
Yeah.
So I'd love you to play your first piece.
Cool.
Does it have a title, or is it just
It
as
does not
is?
have a title. I'm going to call it. How about Candlemas Day?
Candlemas Day.
Today's Candlemas Day.
Wonderful. Let's hear Candlemas Day.
All right. I'm going to put my headphones on.
very newly named Candle Mist Day by Joe Bled. So, Joe, this is fairly new to me. I'm sure quite new to most people listening. Do you want to give us a little bit more of a background on the kind of art that you're creating right now? Kind of where does it come from? How did you get involved? And yeah, what kind of community surrounds it?
Well, there's a community of people making experimental music that's in every town. In Burlington is no different. There are a lot of musicians who um, have used different techniques, such as extended technique or different ways of spontaneous composition or improvisation or chance operation. There's a lot of different ideas about it. I mean, uh, I started off playing rock and roll music. I'm a drummer initially. I started off playing rock and roll music in like rock cover bands, and then I played in like a jam band for a hot second. And then in the early 2000s, I got involved through a friend of mine in a group that was called Nest Material in Burlington, and it was in maybe 2003 maybe, and there was just a lot of like it was like a genre of music that was happening at that time that was really underground. It was referred to as New Weird America by a lot of the press, and it was kind of improvised music with a lot of electronic and rock and roll roots, kind of all mashed together, and that really opened my mind to just unique song structures and different ways to tackle music, which took a long time for me to wrap my head around, because being raised on FM radio, like I was, my dad was pretty typical classic rock blues fan, and my mom listened to the same, and uh, it really took a lot to break away from that and to try to seek out new sounds, which not everybody does, because a lot of people, I feel a lot of people consume music particularly for entertainment purposes, and sometimes some stuff kind of transcends entertainment. Music was never, I don't want to say ever meant to be, but I don't think it initially came into existence for entertainment purposes. It was communication, it was ceremony. I kind of got into a lot of minimalist like composers such as Terry Riley or Charlemagne Palestine, or there's so many different ones, and they started doing things like I don't know if you've heard of NC, different compositions that or Steve Reich, like clapping music, like different music for instrumentalists that didn't follow regular classical music form, that had a lot to do with rhythms. A lot of it was taken from Eastern cultures. There was a lot of like gamelan and certain things like that were kind of repurposed to kind of like bring a little bit of that kind of idea of just like trance, but like transcendental and kind of like music that's able to move people and to really affect them, whether positively or negatively. Like you could have people that just tuned into this radio show and heard what I just did there and were pissed, and like that's absolutely visceral reactions to this kind of music. Confusion. If I would have heard that when I was 22, I would have been like, this is like, this is not real. This is just somebody just, some kind of mental masturbation kind of thing. But I think what I'm trying to do is to create sound that not only like represents what I'm feeling at the moment and what I've experienced and just my life and my philosophy, but also could perhaps trigger certain feelings in other people. Entertainment, sure, but also like a meditative state, or kind of like a different state of mind.
Mm. I'm assuming for you it wasn't like one, as you said, you were involved in cover bands, and then jam bands were a hot second, and you kind of started getting into that then. I'm assuming you didn't immediately don the washboard and start making it yourself. What was the
No.
transition for you to go from music as entertainment or music as,
Sure.
let's say entertainment to this. Well, what was your journey in experimental music?
Yeah, well, I think I heard an album when I was in my early 20s that really changed everything for me. And the album was Ascension by John Coltrane, and it was it was like the middle end of his last free jazz period because he died soon after. But it was just such a angry and yet at the same time very celebratory, like free jazz kind of came out of and was very entwined with the 60s civil rights movement, and it was positive, and at the same time as it was devastatingly emotional, and it just changed the way I looked at music completely, and that brought me down a rabbit hole of free jazz that I stayed into for a long time. So in 2018 I had an opportunity to perform a solo at a friend was doing a music series. It was actually based right upstairs in one of the studios up there, and I had never played solo before because I didn't have the confidence, and drummers were in the back, and so I decided that if I was going to do a solo project, for one, I was going to give it a new name, and I was going to divorce it from anything that had done in the past and any of my other musical projects. And it wasn't going to be just a solo drum set performance, which I've done dozens of those since. But so I decided that I would mix some kind of electronic aspect to it. But I'm totally, like I wrote in an email to Bob, like I am just very just beyond helpless when it comes to electronics and stuff generally. So I have had a lot of help from friends. And so the very first performance, I took one of my son's self-driving toy cars, and I had this nipple gong. So it's a kind of gong that's kind of deep. And I rigged it up so the toy car just ran endlessly in the gong in the circle. And I had a similar mic to what I'm using here on that. And then that was processed to create like an endless kind of electronic drone that was created by the toy car. And then over that, I did a drum set performance. And so I decided that I would try to mix electronics and percussion together, and that was what the project was going to be. So my next thought was like, how can I not have to rely on my friends, but how can I create like the weird electronic like backing track in order to drum over that? And so this was my idea for that. But since the pandemic, basically the life of this, and this in my life in the pandemic have been the same length of time. So I haven't had the space or the time or the opportunity really to incorporate what I initially intended to do, which was play a piece like I did, loop that, and then get off my chair and go to my drums and then play along with the music. And that was the initial goal, which I still might do at some point. But I think I just kind of I fell in love with playing it just the washboard itself, because it really, I mean, you can hit this or do whatever with anything. If you say, I got a little toy that my daughter got at the dentist, I think, and this is a flumie, and a flumie is a thing that you use on gongs to makes like really, you rub it on the gong, and
those wide, expansive noises.
Yeah, exactly. And I have here, this is a piano, or not a piano, excuse me, a guitar slide, and this is I don't even know what you would call it. It's for like the the standing gong that some people refer to as Tibetan bowls. This is for that. And really, I mean, I've played it with rocks and feathers and driftwood, and there's really an endless amount of sounds and very subtle and very in your face sounds that can be produced with this thing, and nothing has ever been the same. There's no, like, even if you were almost doing the exact same thing at two different times, it's going to sound different. And it's like endless possibilities.
When I talk to lots of musicians, and with this show, we have lots of musicians, lots of artists that come back every year, every 2 years, and you can really hear the evolution of their music, and you can talk to them about it, and I started adding in this element, or you kind of change from this genre to this genre. With experimental music, is there a similar kind of evolution in terms of skill level or ideas, or is it kind of branching out in just a different places, and it might not maybe be an evolution as such, maybe just kind of more a new discovery of a place? Are you building on something, or are you kind of just journeying to a new place?
That's an interesting question. I think that, yeah, I'm not really sure. I think that, the evolution of my playing and my solo playing for the last 4 years that this project's been going has naturally changed. It hasn't really been anything that I've planned out. I don't really have any ideas about the future of where the music is going to go. Now, except for always looking for other cool things to play the washboard with. That's basically maybe adding another pedal in. Like I said, I didn't grow up as a guitar player, so I have no idea what guitar pedals do. I mean, the delay, it makes the sound delay, right? And the reverb adds reverb. Other than that, like there's like look at my super muff. I'm like I don't know what that is.
You're already getting too technical for me.
I know.
I can barely do delay.
I don't even know what a regular muff does, let alone a super muff. So I think that might be a step. I might add some more electronics into this. I put out, I record a lot, and I've made a couple of different releases, and I did one that is, I find to be pretty funny. Not really funny, but unique in the fact that I recorded half the album basically when I was still in addiction before I went to rehab, and the second half when I came out. And that is, most of that is like pretty unrecognizable washboard. Like you wouldn't think this guy's got a washboard, like you wouldn't even know. Most people probably would not be able to pin down like what is creating those sounds. And then I've done recordings that are pretty much what you just saw, and just a little bit of delay on the washboard, and different tools and different rhythms and different emotions and different things that I want to express, and different ways to try to communicate.
Is the choice of material you use to play the washboard with, is that a direct reference to the way that you're feeling or the emotion that you're trying to convey to the listener, or is that more random? Is it the way you play it? I mean, or I'm assuming it's probably a combination of both, but maybe you tell me.
Yeah, I think it can be either. It can be random. That's, because if you mix, like if you play two of the same thing, or one of this and one soft thing and one hard thing and one metal and one wood, or it's fun to switch it up. But also if, this is heavy and loud and can be very abrasive. So if I was really in a bad mood and I just need to get that out there, it's very cathartic. I would use something like that. I would maybe hit the board, or, whereas if you're in a very quiet, in some situations you can have very quiet sets when, and when it's just me with my headphones on, I mean, everything sounds cool. So, I can hear this, and it just sounds great. And I'm usually wearing more bracelets, and it'll be just like, there'll be a lot of noise. And, so mood, yes. And randomness, yes.
So yes to both of them.
Yeah.
Well, we would love to hear another piece.
Cool.
So, do you want to name this one? We can keep it untitled. It's up to you.
No, I think this one should be untitled.
Okay.
For no reason.
Right, Joe Blood there with an Untitled piece. Um, so you obviously come from a musical background. You're a drummer yourself, so percussion instruments. So these two things kind of naturally fit hand in hand. But how much is experimental music about musical skill? I mean, we know we're talking about jazz a little bit before we started. You kind of made sure I understood this is not jazz. This is something different. But with jazz, the people playing it are obviously very accomplished musicians. It's a very difficult thing to play. I couldn't pick up a trumpet and start blowing down it and pretend it's jazz because it just wouldn't. How much is that musical knowledge, those musical skills, important in something like experimental music, or is it something that even myself, who is completely tone deaf, no rhythm, could I pick up the washboard and start creating this, and it would be accepted in those communities?
I think there's several different ways to go about that answer because experimental music, in its very earliest, let's say, incantations in the 20th century, came out of the academies. I mean, these were composers. These were conventional composers who went to school for composition and were very learned. And a lot of the laboratories that a lot of the early work of music concrete and those things came from, they were sponsored by academic institutions. They were prodigies, a lot of these initial composers that you will hear about. That being said, there's also a school of thought in experimental music. Certain things fall under experimental music, let's say like harsh noise music, where you literally plug something into the mixer and make the most disgusting, jarring, loud, like nearly make you want to throw up kind of sound. And that is kind of almost like a reclamation of the idea of what does it mean to be an artist? What does it mean to create? What does it mean to be tone deaf? So I think that when it comes down to, for me, I couldn't care less about anybody's musical ability. Like I have friends that are musicians that I respect who went to school for music and have advanced degrees in composition, and I have friends who are completely self-taught, and friends like myself who can't read music. I'm a drummer. I've been playing the drums for 40 years, and I don't exactly know what a time signature means. And you're right that probably in the first wave, the reason I get so turned off with the jazz label is that I find it's a catch-all for instrumental music of any sort. I find the term to be absolutely meaningless, because of that fact. Like, if let's say your conventional music fan is like, oh, this doesn't have lyrics and is not a pop song, it's jazz, So it's kind of like, what does that mean? And that is still a genre that's dominated, I feel, by musicianship and virtuosity, and so much so to the exclusion in some cases of any kind of feeling or soul, or you have someone like Kenny G. Like Kenny G is such an accomplished and virtuosic musician. It's incredible what he can do. I mean, I'd rather listen to nothing ever again than listen to his music, because it's just meaningless to me, because because of the fact that I don't think it conveys anything except for look what I can do. And if you're looking for that in music, that's great. And if you're a rock fan and you're looking for that in music, there's lots of genres that are very technical, like some technical metal and things like that are just like virtuistic. And then there's music that to me is just as moving, just as relevant, just as emotional, just as necessary, where people who play two chords on a guitar, or people who have literally never played a guitar before, and then I'm in a band now. And I find that the intent, in a lot of cases, the intent for me is as important as the impact of the music itself. Like, that might be, I might go to a bar and see a band that is like literally the worst cover band I've ever heard. But if they're into it and they're having fun and they're trying their best and they think they're doing okay, and like I'm happy to see it. some genres of music that is really frowned upon to play badly. Like I tried playing, I was in a jazz standards group for a little while, and I faked my way through it every single second. And, I finally had to stop. I had to be like, listen, I don't really know how to play this music. You guys are out there with your books, like your fake books, like reading music, and I'm like, I don't even know what the hell I'm doing. So in that case, I was faking it. I wasn't into it. I felt like I was being phony, and therefore, I mean, the music was probably fine. If you were sitting in the audience, it'd probably be like, hey, this is great. But there, I felt I brought the band down just because of the fact that like my intent was just, not there.
So for you, it is more about the emotion and as you said, the intent you're bringing into the performance more than the kind of the skill level that you have there. I think when you were talking about certain genres of music where it just feels completely soulless, the first band that came to mind was Metallica, who is very technically gifted, every single one of them. The fact they're very professional musicians, but I've never listened to a Metallica song and it has connected me with any way, shape, or form. It's just bland.
Yeah. No, that can be. I think a lot of that is they overstayed their welcome. I think that if Metallica would have ended in 1991, maybe we would have looked at them differently. But that is true. I mean, and especially, I think that most Metallica fans, especially like super fans, are not metal aficionados. If Metallica is to them the pinnacle of like what metal is, then they don't really, they're not there for those certain things,
Right.
But then again, there's genres of metal that are 2-chord, slow, stoner, kind of stuff. And, but yeah, a lot of people, there's a lot of jam band stuff that falls under like a lot of people don't like it, and they think it's just like vacant and the lyrics are dumb, and there's the noodling is just over excessive, like show off, that kind and I can see that, and and I think a lot of it is like that to me, but then again, I grew up on a lot of that stuff, and I find some of it to be like really I don't love music like that's a joke, like comedy kind of music, but sometimes when it's very lighthearted and done in a playful way, then I find that to be endearing, and I can get behind that in some groups. But to get back to the initial question, I absolutely think you could sit here in this chair with this delay pedal and this mixer and do what I just did. Maybe not exactly, and would it still be creating a piece of music if you were just trying to emulate what I just did? Is this music at all? Is it just sound? Is it noise? Like, all those, we don't have how much time we got,
I guess if I came with an intent, then even if it sounded similar to
Yeah.
you, then it's still creating something.
Right. Like if you were sitting over there and you were like, I feel like really moved by what I'm experiencing, and I have to put that thing on and I really have to give it a shot. That'd be awesome. And I feel that that would come across. Or if you came over here, kind of mockingly and was like, look at me, I'm an experimental musician, right. Like that would come across too,
Right.
I feel.
Yeah.
But would you do a Pepsi challenge here and like, you never know, who knows,
Right.
maybe not. Maybe
Right.
that's just in my head.
So a couple of things I definitely wanted to talk to you about. One is you just released a record or two single, a single that came out in February, right?
Yeah, well, no, that
Did I get my dates wrong? Was that February last year? And I'm just
that could be February last year.
It was in February last year.
I had 2 albums come out last year, one of which was
Positude is the one I was referring to.
Positude. I have the shirt on.
It was
today.
last year.
That was last February.
My brain has not quite gone over to 2022 yet.
No, I hear you. That was a friend of mine was going through her second round of battling cancer, and she had this word positude that she always used. So they threw her a fundraiser, like an online fundraiser with a bunch of different performances by a bunch of local musicians. She's been in the music scene here for a long time. And so I recorded a piece for that, which the first part of that is kind of like random percussion on things on a table. Did you watch the video or just listen to it?
No, I just listened to it on Bandcamp.
Yeah. And then the second piece is a solo drum performance, and that's kind of been my bread and butter for a long time. The solo drum set stuff.
I mean, obviously, it's a great gesture to a friend to put out music, especially if they're a musician themselves.
Right.
I hope she managed
Yeah,
to
she
survive
kicked it, and she's been good for a long time.
That's great.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is another piece that you did that really kind of caught my attention, which is Autumn Efforts, which came out again in the end of 2020, and each track is labeled by a different sort of material. So you've got metal, wood, stone, rubber, leather, and then last track metal, wood, stone, rubber, leather all together. Can you talk a little bit about that? And now, after watching it perform, I think I might have a better idea of what that might be about. But yeah, please.
Well, in that one, what I tried to do was, as close as I possibly could, play the exact same thing with the exact same effects, just using different materials. So the leather are these really great drumsticks that my wife bought me that are from a First Nations tribe in Quebec. They make these like kind of traditional powwow style. This guy powwow style drumsticks. So that's the leather. So I don't even remember exactly what the pattern was, but it was literally something like this. And then the metal was the actual like kind of old-fashioned can openers, which is what comes with this washboard as the tool to play it. And the stones with stones, and and it was just amazing. Like if you listen to them, how different they all turned out, and a lot of that is just the reaction of the electronics with the. So like the one that's the most far out, I think, is the one that's the actual quietest. It's the leather, and that is just like constant. It's like it barely sounds like It's like the looper and the delay just took over that track. Right. So and then combining them all at the end, like that piece of music could be, in my mind, extended like infinity, and it's just so like encompassing. It's just it's really.
Such an interesting concept for a record. Okay, so we got about time for one more piece.
Cool.
So would you like to name the piece you're playing out with, or should we just call it Untitled 2?
Let's call it Untitled 2.
Alrighty.
I'd like to dedicate it to Luke, who just
stepped in.
Just stepped in.
right, Joe Bled playing us out there with Untitled 2. JB, thank you so much for coming in. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate the thought out questions.
Yeah, this is fascinating to me. Honestly,
Great.
I love picking people's brains about music that I have no idea about. So this has been an enlightening conversation.
Great, thanks a lot.
You can check us out next week. We're gonna have a band called Laces come in. We are off next week according to Bob, and I cannot figure out dates. We're 2 weeks time. Why we off next week? Oh yes. Well, there we go. We were meant to have an Arts Riot show next week. That's been called off. Thank you, COVID. And the week after that, we have Laces in, who are a good fun band, and you should all listen into that. This is all we've got for tonight, though. This has been WOMMLP 105.9 The Radiator. It's been The Rocket Shop. I've been your host, Tom Proctor, and good night.